Before you really start your first business, take your time to understand the things I'm going to share in this video. Over the years, I've built different business models for corporates, small companies, but also for myself. Currently, I make around 150k in my main job, plus an additional 130k on my side businesses that come on top of that. As a graduated business engineer, I exactly know how to prepare before you start your first business. The first thing I want to talk about is underestimated a lot by people. It's to have some financial stability in your life before you jump into your first business. Let me explain that. Because most people get this wrong. They think financial stability means being a millionaire or having a lot of savings aside, like an emergency fund, which covers them 3 to 6 months. Unfortunately, that is also a thing which most online experts teach you to do so, because they basically tell you, hey, if you have a lot of savings aside, like an emergency fund, then you can start your first business. And although you may be not going to make any money in the beginning, you have that emergency fund to cover your rent, operating costs and other costs, and you don't have the pressure that your first business needs to make money right away. But I think this is too short-sighted. What most people are missing is that an emergency fund, if you build it up, is then melting away like a block of ice. So from my perspective, you have to make sure that you have a steady income stream, so that if your business is not running and not generating any money, that your existence is not at risk, because you have made sure that you have a constant income stream, like a main income, for example. I still work to this day in my 9-to-5 job. Although I said at the beginning that my side businesses are making me around 130k a year. I could at the moment easily jump off and focus on my side businesses to grow them to make even more money. But this is not important. And by the way, if you want to know how I manage full-time job earning 150k a year plus managing 6 businesses on the side, let me know in the comment section down below by commenting side businesses. That way I know what to cover in my upcoming videos. Let's come to the second thing, which most businesses underestimated a lot when they first start out. It's to deal professionally with taxes. Because last year alone, in 2025 in Australia, more than 1,700 businesses were forced to close because of their tax debt. And I see that with a lot of people I know also. They are spending the money like they own it, but in reality, they didn't pay the tax properly. That's why I can only appeal to you as first-time founders to deal with your tax professionally as early as possible. Basically, there are 2 ways. Either you hire an expensive tax consultant or you do it by yourself. Then the real question becomes, do you actually make more money by focusing on your business? Or do you save more money by hiring a tax consultant? If the answer is that you actually make more money on focusing on your business and you can afford paying a tax consultant, you should definitely do that. But nevertheless, if you even make much more money focusing on your business, you should at least have a basic understanding of tax. Because at the end of the day, not everyone is a trusted partner. I know a bunch of people who get screwed over by their tax professionals, by their accountants and so on. That's why to this day, although I have trustworthy accountants on my side, although I have trustworthy tax consultants on my side, I still double check everything they say. It's not like I'm micromanaging my employees. It's about having a clear responsibility towards my business. Because at the end of the day, I pay my employees and they're counting on me. They are counting on the business they're working for. And I couldn't even imagine a world where I would just blindly trust something so important and crucial in my business without double checking it. So therefore, if you're ever deciding to start your own business, you should have at least a ground or basic understanding of specific topics like accounting, taxation, so you don't get screwed over. The next thing I want to talk about is people who are starting a business focus on making money much more than everything else. And from my point of view, this is exactly the wrong thing to focus on. If you make printed paper the center of your motivation, you'll never be fulfilled.
What do you think the $20 note thinks of you?
Nothing, it's just money, it's just a piece of paper.
Of course.
Right.
It can't think.
Yeah.
It's a piece of paper with 20 written on it.
Sure.
It's a commodity. It doesn't think. It's a commodity that's used to transact for goods and services to satisfy wants and needs. That's all it is.
So especially if you first start out, focus on progress rather than on the money you make. A very good way to do that is documenting your journey. Because I struggled with that topic also. I focused on making money as much as possible, but when I changed my approach, when I documented every step, at that time really did understand I was achieving much more than I actually thought. As a professional project manager, I use proven methods to manage my life. I go far deeper than a simple to-do list. I create a whole roadmap with streams for every goal of mine. For those who are new into the world of project management, let me do an example for you. Let's say my goals are to lose 20 kilos of weight, get 10 more clients for my cleaning service business, and let's say I want to get a raise about 20k in my main job. These are clear formulated goals, and next I do translate them into my roadmap. For example, for losing 20 kilos of body weight, I plan around 6 months. To get 10 more clients in my cleaning service business, I plan around 3 months. And to get a 20k raise in my main job, I plan around 12 months. And my goals are reached at that exact point when each stream comes to an end. But if you do know the proven methods in project management, you'll understand that one key thing is missing. It's the milestones. Milestones act as a guidance towards your goal. They are like check marks. Some examples for milestones is when we look at our first goal where we wanted to lose some weight. Let's say after 2 months we want to lose 10 kilos. Then next, after the next 2 months, we want to lose 5 kilos. And the last 2 months we want to lose again 5 kilos. So in sum, we have for one goal 3 milestones. And each milestone paves the way that you reach your goal. If we look at the official definition of what a milestone is, we can say a milestone is a specific point within a project's life cycle used to measure the progress toward the ultimate goal. So what we are doing with that is we are breaking down our goal into smaller chunks. These chunks we call milestones. If you now want to know what the true professional does next is he breaks down the milestones into different tasks. For example, for our first milestone, losing 10 kilos in 2 months, a potential task could be hitting the gym 4 days a week. Let's say on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday and Saturday, right? This is a clear formulated task. Then a next task could be eating clean, right? To get a calories deficit. I think you get the idea. So every task is set up to achieve the milestone. And the milestones are set up to achieve the goal. If you start to document your journey like that, you'll exactly understand how many tasks you already completed successfully. And if you just fail on one task, or maybe you slip off your schedule by 1 day, you will understand that in the bigger picture, if you think long term, it will not affect that much your success. It's quite normal for us human beings to look only at the negative events that happened in our life, and some studies also prove this point. They clearly outline that the human brain is tied to negative events much stronger than on positive ones. And exactly by documenting everything the way I told you to, you will understand how many times you actually succeeded. And therefore, you'll realize when your brain is playing games on you with negative events, in that moment you can just prove to yourself that you've probably succeeded much more than you failed. And that's exactly the first step to move from a money-motivated mindset to a progress-driven individual. But that progress requires another skill as well. It's to sit down, shut up, and learn. Because oftentimes we think we know everything better, but a good trait from every successful entrepreneur is the fact that they think they don't know enough. Staying always curious, staying always nice to others, gets them to their success. I do see that a lot with young people who recently graduated, for example, or got their first promotion at work. What I see is they start wearing designer clothes, they start changing their attitude because they think now that they've achieved something. And what happens next is a change of nature, a change of character, But what most people like that are missing is that the way they were before they changed, made them the success. And if they now change their approach, that this exactly will block them potentially on the further road to success. As I said, one of the most important traits an entrepreneur could have is staying nice and curious. You have to listen what other people are trying to tell you. And that's also one of my best advices I can give on this channel. Start listening more and start speaking less. With this approach, you're basically doing two things. The first thing is you're letting your conversation partner know that you are valuing his thoughts and therefore are open to the idea to listen to him. And on the other side, you don't give away your own opinion. This is really important, especially if you talk with customers. When you talk to customers and you shout your opinion out of your lungs, then most of the times you'll not be able to navigate around certain problems or certain issues. But if you are able to stay slick with it and your conversation partner can't really grasp your intentions, then maybe during a sales pitch or something like that, you're able to pitch the idea in the way that your conversation partner wants to hear it. If you're able to sit down, shut up, and just learn, you'll also learn one major thing that's quite different from everything else. It's losing. You can't always win. There will be small losses and big losses. Every successful entrepreneur had to deal with both along the way. And if you really listen closely to the video over the last few minutes, you'll recognize one thing. The things that I've shared with you already are connected to each other. Let's say, for example, you've lost big time in your business. You've lost a lot of money. But you followed step 1, being financially stable. In that moment, you'll understand that your existence is covered, that your bills are covered, and that the loss you've took is actually not that bad because you can still live, you can still pay for your groceries. The second thing we talked about was that you have to deal with taxes professionally, right? So if you followed the second tip I gave you just a few minutes ago, then if you lose, you'll probably not lose on taxes, right? Because if you truly understand the tax game, it will be not a surprise if the tax governmental institutions come to you and say, hey, you have to pay here $1,000, here $2,000, because you already understand the game. You'll only be surprised if you don't educate yourself on this topic. But if you followed step 2, it will be much easier to lose. So you'll only lose to the tax topic if you don't educate yourself on this topic properly. But now the real question becomes, what does it add as a value if I lose on another topic, but my tax topic is covered or was covered? At least you have fulfilled the full requirements from a business owner perspective in terms of your duties, right? If you lose on a complete different thing, then you will not think that you was the primary reason for failure. It was something unexpected maybe that happened and that led to the case that you lost, but you'll understand the necessary things. You'll learn the necessary things. The next thing we talked about in this video was planning and documenting. And if you do this the right way, you'll understand that how many times you actually succeeded and how many times you actually failed. But by documenting everything, you can exactly outline the sources of failure. And you'll learn, you'll optimize your approach, and you'll probably next time not fail in that same spot again. That is really important. And the last tip we talked about before we spoke about losing was to sit down, shut up and learn. And in terms of losing, this helps because with the trait to be able to sit down and shut up, you're cutting off emotions. Because when we lose, usually we get pretty emotional and then we start doing mistakes. But by taking just a few steps back and pulling yourself out of the focus, you're able to rationalize everything. And that way you're dealing with losses much better. So if you would just apply those things that I talked about in this video already, you'll naturally build up habits to deal with losing even better. And this is also another thing which helps you in your change from a money-driven individual to a progress-driven individual. The next thing I want to talk about in this video when you start your first business, it's to find your own way. Forget about convincing family and friends about your plans. Move in silence, and just then, and only if you want to, just then tell others what you've already did. Because just before that, it doesn't make any sense to share your plans with family and friends, as this puts extra pressure on your shoulders. I remember back to a time when I landed my first part-time job. I was a student still that day, but I landed a part-time job in an institute at university for international project management. I worked there for around, let's say, 2 years or something like that. And that exact day, I wanted to quit my job to move into the automotive industry because I had now a complete new offer for a full-time position as I graduated. My best friend and I was at the university and he just asked me what I was up to. I just told him that I'm going to quit my job I was working in, and he was just left speechless in that moment as he hadn't a clue that I was working in that institute. He asked me, "Do you work in that institute, bro?" And I just nodded. I didn't tell a thing, still didn't tell a thing, and he just started laughing because he exactly knew how I was. I was doing my thing, but I was never talking too much about it. I'm just updating others when it's all said and done. And it's the same with this YouTube game over here. I'm just talking about things that I've achieved already. What is already in the past. I don't talk much about future. And this approach also helped me to deal with my own struggles, because at the end of the day, I couldn't share my struggles to my family and friends because I never talked to someone about the situation which was going on in my life. And that way I was alone all the time. And I have to come up with solutions that would only solve my personal problems. And this was the first step to grow a professional network outside of my personal friend group. This is exactly the way I'm managing my life today as well. Because I have a professional network, I rarely talk about private stuff there, and I also have a group of friends. I rarely talk about business-related topics there. The next thing I want to talk about in this video is to hire the right people as soon as possible. And I get asked a lot of time, how am I able to manage 6 businesses and still work full-time from 9 to 5 every day? The answer is simple. I hired the right people early on, plus I use a lot of automation, of course. Because at the end of the day, if I would try to do everything on my own, I couldn't barely manage 1 business, let alone 6. And that's a mistake almost every entrepreneur makes in the beginning of their career. Let's say you have a cool idea, maybe for an app, then the first thing which pops out to your mind is, well, I have to learn coding, and you'll start watching 30 hours tutorials on YouTube. And this is exactly the wrong approach, because you can't do everything on your own. It is actually much smarter to outsource the idea to a freelancer, let's say. He gets the idea to an MVP level, and that MVP level you try to sell to your customers, and then next try to sell to investors to grow your business, to be able to hire people afterwards. I did the same concept with the most simple business ideas you can imagine. For example, my cleaning service. I knew from day one that I wasn't the perfect cleaner. I was not that accurate in my actions, but I'm a good salesman. So what can I do? I can call some people, I can get some orders from customers, and I can hire people who can perform the actual work. So what do? I pay them much higher than the market average. And cleaning service employees are actually really hard to find. You might wonder about that, especially if you have some special requirements. So by paying them a much higher stake, or better said, a much higher income compared to the average market, they will stay happy and they will take responsibility. So if they go on a vacation, for example, or they're sick, then they would exactly coordinate alternatives. They would speak to other employees, they would speak to friends in their circle if someone can do the job for themselves. If some other guy maybe can jump in for a few days or for a few weeks. I'm rarely pulled into the operative business, and I can only advise you to do the same. Coming to my last tip, get out in the real world. That's where the money is. It's not like the money is glued to your phone screen or on your computer screen. You have to go out and you have to pursue your dreams. Most founders actually nowadays want to create the next Instagram, the next Airbnb, because we've made believe that tech is the only way to get rich. And this is far, far from true. Nowadays, almost no one thinks of the simple businesses like running a grocery store, landscaping, or agriculture. A lot of rich people I know have the most simple businesses you can ever imagine. They work, for example, in the construction industry. If you just want to understand how these people find niche, I can only advise you to work in an unfancy business just for a few weeks, to understand the business, to understand the concept, to get to know a few customers, and to also learn the work, because it's much simpler if you start under an umbrella that's protected by someone who already owns a business before starting your own. If you are now curious about the unfancy businesses, write down in the comment section down below unfancy businesses, and I will cover it in one of my upcoming videos. So as always, thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and I see you in the next one. Bye.